So can we please talk about UFC Vegas 65 headlined by Derek Lewis versus Sergey Spivak? That is a hell of a hard-hitting fight. I'm going to be breaking that down and just a few more that have caught my eye from that card. So I'm going to start off in the welterweight division. You've got the Australian Jack Della Maddalena coming up against Danny Roberts. Now, Danny Roberts is someone that I've seen quite a few times. I'm a big fan of his. English fighter. He's just fun. He's fun to watch. He's come up with a few good wins. He beat that Emir fella, which nobody really expected him to do. And yeah, he's one of those guys that I always root for. But he does come up against some tough matchups every once in a while. And I think this might be one of them. Because you've got Jack Della Maddalena, who's fairly new on the scene. He's from Australia, 12-2. I think he's only had like 2 or 3 fights in the UFC. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, his fights in the UFC have been very, very impressive. I think he's coming off 2 first-round knockouts in a row. He's a real handful. Speaking of hands, Maddalena has hands. He's got really vicious hands. In fact, one thing that I would like to look at, his fight against Emir was particularly impressive because he finished him on the fence here. Right, let's bring this up. So Maddalena versus Emir. This is what Maddalena is particularly good at, and it just caught my eye because look, he moves him subtly against the fence, gets him backing up, and then he's in and out. Even though he's against the fence, he's in, it is out. He's in, he's out, and then boom, that one to the liver. That's the one that got him, and then the rest is history. So for me, Danny Roberts has to stay off that fence at all costs. However, I would say that Roberts does have some pretty good footwork. He's fairly good at staying kind of rangier, like staying around the outside, kicking, throwing combinations and getting out. But I don't know. It just seems like anytime Maddalena gets into striking exchanges with anybody, he tends to get the better of them. And he's just such a handful. I will be cheering on Danny Roberts here, but I don't know. This is a tough matchup. It is a very, very tough matchup. My heart definitely goes with Danny Roberts, but my head would be picking Maddalena in this one, probably by TKO. Just getting in and out, overwhelming with combinations and dropping him with something until the referee steps in. But you know what? Danny Roberts is a gamer. He really is. So you'd be a fool to count him out. Just looking at the skill sets, I don't know. It might not be a good night for him. I hope I'm wrong. I really, really hope I'm wrong on that one, I've got to say. The next one, heavyweight division, is Chase Sherman against Waldo Cortez Acosta. Now, the kind of brief story behind these 2 fighters, you've got Sherman, who's a long-time UFC guy. He's been in the UFC twice, actually. He got cut and then he worked his way back. He's always been a bit of a kind of gatekeeper on the prelims and early prelims, but he always goes out there to fight. He's got pretty good hands, actually. He's got quite quick hands, and he's quite a lot more mobile than I would say some of the UFC heavyweights. And initially last week, he was supposed to fight last week, but it got called off. He was supposed to fight Josh Parisian, which actually I think is a really good matchup for Sherman because he's just so much more mobile than Parisian would have been. Parisian's kind of like a much larger, lumbering heavyweight. Now, I feel like he was being given the Parisian fight because he got fed to Romanov. Although I think he's beaten Vandera since then. I could probably just bring that up now, but I'm not going to. But I'm fair. I might be wrong there. Either way, he got fed to that Romanov guy who was undefeated and just eating everybody alive. Now, Sherman, he rarely gets nice match. It's not a bad matchup here because he is being put up against another undefeated guy in Waldo Cortez Acosta. But what I would say is actually they have an opponent in common because looking at it here, Vandera, yeah. Sherman did KO Vandera. That is right. Excellent. Yeah, Sherman KO'd Vandera and Acosta got the decision. I know that MMA math doesn't work like that, but for me, it's not like Acosta's 8-0, but he's killing everybody. He's not lighting the world on fire, is he? Not really. He's getting a lot of decisions. and he hasn't. I don't think he's had any finishes in the UFC yet. But for me, look, neither fighter really goes for takedowns. This should play out on the feet. Statistically speaking, neither fighter goes for takedowns at all. Sherman has got a really good chance here. I think he's got the reach, and he's going to be a little bit quicker as well. He has a kind of frustrating style because he is quite quick and he can get in and he can get out, which a lot of heavyweights struggle to do. So look, I'm going to take Sherman here just purely because of the odds and because I quite like him. You know what? But Salsa boy Waldo Cortez Acosta, he's undefeated for a reason. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see how that one goes. Then you have got Kennedy Zechukwu versus Ion Cutelaba. Now, I don't know if I'm pronouncing... I know I'm pronouncing Cutelaba, all right, because I've heard it. But Zechukwu? I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to call him Kennedy because that's much easier. This one is light heavyweight division, and it's going to be it's two hard-hitting light heavyweights. It's going to be a real fun one. But this one is going to be over on my Patreon. So if you want to see this breakdown, please head over to the Burt Locker on Patreon. Thank you. Got the main event, Derek Lewis versus Sergey Spivak, the polar bear. Now, both of these guys are super, super dangerous. This is just a fun fight. You've got Derek Lewis, who is the kind of long-time heavyweight contender, two-time heavyweight contender, I think. But he's always been the guy who's just been knocking people out. And then he tends to get up against elite-level competition, and he does, with respect, tend to struggle at that point. Sergey Spivak is on an absolute tear. He's kind of one of those guys that was just always floating around like the kind of the top, the lower end of the rankings, and he's just a problem. He's pretty well rounded. He's quite well rounded. He's got grappling, he's got good striking, he's a big dude, and he's just been putting on an absolute tear lately outside of his fight against Aspinall. And Tom Aspinall, we all know how good he is. There's no real shame in a loss to Tom Aspinall. Outside of that, he's unbeaten in his last 6. Do you know what I mean? And 3 of them are knockouts as well, or TKOs probably. But for me, the main issue we're starting to see with Derek Lewis, especially at this stage in his career, is that he's not really evolved very much. He doesn't tend to, like, I know if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but he is now coming off 2 stoppage losses, one to Tai Tuivasa and one to Cyril Gane. Now, I know there's no shame in losing to either of those guys, but I don't know. Derek Lewis, he doesn't seem too keen on fixing the issues that have caused those losses, in that he just seems to kind of, if he's against somebody who's faster, he tends to get outmatched. And people have now found that if they can just put on a pace against Tuivasa, it was chaos, to be fair, absolute chaos. The way Tuivasa managed to come back is just a testament to him. But the one against Gane as well, it's just and also Sergey Pavlovich. Like he lost to him as well, in a similar way that he lost to Cyril Gane, in that like Pavlovich was just able to just pour on the pressure until he wilted. Now people have seen that that's the way to beat Derek Lewis, just pour on that pressure. I think the blueprint's kind of been written, and Derek Lewis refuses to write another blueprint to kind of combat that. That being said, I don't know if Spivak has the kind of speed that Pavlovich or Cyril Gane have. I think he's almost certainly quicker than Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis, it's weird. He's quite slow and lumbering, but his hand speed is actually really impressive. His hand speed, like when he launches, his hands go very, very quickly. And Derek Lewis only needs to catch you one time. That's it. Derek Lewis has got that one punch knockout power that just absolutely flattens people. And yeah, so you can't count Lewis out here, especially the fact this fight is not taking place in Texas or in Houston. Those are terrible places for Derek Lewis to fight. For some reason, he can't fight for shit in those places. This is in Vegas. Like, the pressure's kind of off here. When the pressure's kind of off Lewis, he tends to thrive. So that could be a problem for Sergey Spivak, because I think Lewis is on the skid that he's on, he's kind of being expected to get overwhelmed here. Because I do think that Sergey Spivak is the more well-rounded fighter. I think he's got much better grappling. I don't know if he's going to entertain the striking with Derek Lewis, because I think that is the path of most jeopardy, and ideally you want to try and avoid that. If you're fighting Derek Lewis, you want to try and get him to the ground, because Derek Lewis, he doesn't tend to use very good technique to get up from the ground. He just explodes out and gets up, which he can only do for so long, and you'll tire the big man out. Sergey Spivak's grappling is extremely good, extremely high level. I think that that's the path of least resistance. I can see Sergey Spivak taking Derek Lewis down. Derek Lewis maybe getting out of the first couple, but then you start slowing down, start breathing heavy in the second round, maybe even into the third. This is a 5-round fight. Sergey Spivak's going to just keep threatening with the grappling, keep on using it. He's probably going to be using long punches, 1-2 combinations to try and stay out of that big heavy hook range of Derek Lewis, to try and avoid those big shots. And if he can do that, he's going to eventually get those takedowns. And once he gets it to the ground at a certain point, Lewis isn't going to have enough explosivity to get out of those positions. And we will see Spivak win this one by submission. I think it's going to be a head and arm choke, very similar to the one that he caught Tai Tuivasa in. But again, the reason this one's really interesting is because Lewis he always has that one punch knockout power that will even the playing field. So honestly, I'm picking Spivak here by submission. I have no real confidence in that pick whatsoever, because against Lewis, how can you be confident? As long as he's standing, and if you're standing as well, he has got a chance to put your lights out. And that's why this main event is outstanding, and I cannot wait to see it. I'm excited as all hell. I hope you enjoy the fights. I'm going to be doing a recap of these on Wednesday of next week, but it will probably air on Thursday. You know how it is. You know the usual schedule by now. But until then, keep those odds long and those bets terrible.